Professors or something. Yeah. This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome to all of you. We are in Johannesburg in South Africa. My name, of course, is Eben Jansen. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. Right now we're streaming on YouTube Live with our entire show available on our YouTube channel if you miss it or if you miss a segment. Today we look at the ongoing post office strike here in South Africa as the latest round of negotiations have now collapsed. The EFF will face the Power and Privileges Committee in Parliament today. We look then at the Open Government Partnership, what that entails, and a bit later on we get an update from the SABC Commission of Inquiry. But first, let's get the morning's news from Katrin Milan.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrin Milan, and let's take a look at the headlines this morning. 20 EFF MPs, including party leader Julius Malema, will appear before Parliament's Power and Privileges Committee today. They face charges of disrupting proceedings and displaying contempt for the National Assembly after shouting "pay back the money" at President Jacob Zuma. The MPs could be suspended from the National Assembly for up to 14 working days if found guilty. Arms deal whistleblower Terry Crawford Brown is expected to continue giving evidence at the SABC Commission of Inquiry today. Yesterday, he made allegations of bribery, fraud and corruption against political figures in South Africa and abroad.
The emphasis in that statement was focus on the offsets. That was dismissed, and so the operatives then took some of the documents that the CDA had furnished some months earlier and fashioned them into the so-called Memorandum to Patrice de Lille.
The market reacted positively yesterday to the news that President Jacob Zuma had appointed Lesetja Kganyago as a Reserve Bank governor. He takes over from Jill Marcus, who has been at the helm for the past 5 years. The rand strengthened by 5 cents shortly after the announcement. South African bonds were also trading firmer. In the first known case of Ebola transmission outside of Africa, a nurse in Spain has contracted the deadly virus after caring for a sick priest who had been flown back from West Africa for treatment. Authorities are trying to determine exactly how she contracted Ebola. Meanwhile, in the US, federal officials and airlines are discussing whether US airports should start screening passengers to identify people who might have Ebola. The current Ebola outbreak has killed at least 3,439 people since it began in March.
The potential spread of the disease beyond these areas in West Africa becomes more imminent. So I'm going to be putting a lot of pressure on my fellow heads of state and government around the world to make sure that they are doing everything that they can to join us in this effort.
All those top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Katrin. Now, the Communications Workers Union have confirmed that negotiations to end the post office strike, which has been carrying on intermittently for 3 years now, have now finally collapsed. The CWU, which is more than 8,500 members who work for the post office, has asked the government to intervene. It wants the board to be fired as well as arrange a treasury bailout for the embattled parastatal. The union also wants the post office to convert nearly 8,000 casual workers into permanent staff. This was the reason for the initial strike. Now, well, for the latest and an update, we're joined by the Communication Workers Union General Secretary Aubrey Chabalala this morning. Good morning, Aubrey. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and how are you?
Very good, Aubrey. The question the whole country wants to know is, how are you guys?
Well, we are trying under circumstances, I must say.
I want to ask you, just give us a little update. It seems as if the latest is that the two parties involved, yourself and management, you're not even talking to one another at the moment. How do you then hope to improve relations and end this ongoing strike, which is affecting a lot of people in the country?
Well, since last week, through the intervention of the minister, there were talks of all stakeholders in the South African Post Office. That includes the Department of Telecommunication and Postals. The minister and the deputy minister were present in the meeting. We have started to engage starting from last week up until last night. So the talks, including the other unions that are involved in the South African Post Office, have started. Though we note that there are concerted efforts within some of the executive to collapse the negotiations themselves. Yesterday we have noticed that whilst we were negotiating, there were workers that were called in to be given the permanent contracts in Cape Town. The condition was that they must resign from CW and join other unions.
Okay, that's unconfirmed, you say, but now attitude seems to be hardening. There seems to be no conversation going on, and from your side, one of the demands that you're making is that the minister fire both the Post Office board and then members or some members of management. Just tell us what you're thinking around that, and why would you want that?
Look, the crisis in Post Office has not started yesterday. It's over a period of about 3 years, and there have been a series of unprotected strike that we have seen Post Office actually going to the state of paralysis. And it's under the leadership of the very same board that we are talking about, which failed to do its fiduciary duties, to make the executive account. And so we are saying that if there's a bailout coming from Treasury, how will it come to the very same people that collapsed the South African Post Office? So the first step in making sure that we reverse or address these issues is to make sure that we outroot the entire executive management, deal with the new executive management, the entire board, so that we can go forward. That's where the crisis is. And this was an attempt to weakening the bargaining process by the executive, which was a plan going bad.
But surely that will be very difficult to get, because they could claim the same in this long process, that they want the management of the union to be disbanded, and then we start nowhere. How do you find middle ground in this process for the betterment of the service that has to be provided to the citizens of South Africa?
Firstly, there's some executives that have been suspended. We welcome that move. That's the first point. If you are saying that the executive must go, we must have reasons, and we have valid reasons. Firstly, last month we didn't, in fact this month we didn't have salaries paid on time. That reflects what depth of the crisis is in the South African Post Office. We have them moving from the building that they own to a porch building. Without any reason, and that led to financial woes in the South African Post Office.
So you say this is at the heart of the financial woes within, is that they've gone into a new building. It's so there's allegations of lavishness on the part of management out there right now. The thing I wanted to ask you is, let's talk about the temporary staff that you want to turn into permanent staff. Who must pay for that if the business is in financial difficulty?
Look, we had agreements since 2005. This agreement gave a process on how you convert workers in a processed way. And the management chose to ignore that completely. And what they've done, they then opened backdoor negotiations with other formations and groupings that are not recognized within the bargaining sector. And that led to a various and series of strikes. And we have workers here who've been starving for over 14 years. We've been employed under labor brokers, casualizations, you name it. And they've not been addressed in the past 14 years. So that's patient enough. But we are saying that the Post Office is a viable institution. Post Office remain critical in the developmental state. There are people solely relying on it in the rural areas for studying and other means. So it remains relevant. But you do that by making sure that the most important resource of the company that it has, which is a human capital, is looked after. This is what we are driving to, that if you want to champion a proper service delivery, you have to look after the workers that are doing that.
But a business must be a viable entity and must make money in order to service the human capital that you say. And how do you, as the CWU, see that good business practice and that if there is a bailout, that this money will not be spent in the wrong areas? Absolutely.
Firstly, executive must leave because they failed to do that, precisely what we are talking about. And two, we are saying that there have been investigation after investigation. We have the one by the public protector, which is at the preliminary stage. We have the one that initiated by the president of the country, President Jacob Zuma. So it tells you that it was not business as usual. So for us to take a step forward, we have to firstly correct that. That's a first instance. So that we can have a viable business, you need to have a proper leadership. And we failed to have that in the past 5 years or so.
Now, reports from management are that they've said all posts will be permanent by December this year. Why have you refused to listen to them then? Is it a case of a breakdown of trust completely? Absolutely.
They've said that in 2005, they've said that in 2009, they said that in 2010 and 11, they said that 2012, they said that this year. All these have been agreements through and through. None of them implemented. So how do you then believe? And even workers won't believe that. And we must make it clear that in this instance, it was not workers, it was not unions calling for a strike. What has happened is that whilst negotiations were taking place, Post Office management simply ignored the bargaining processes and negotiated with people who were on unprotected strike, assaulting people, gave them contracts, made them permanent, and the entire workforce collapsed and said, if that's a process where they listen to processes that are outside the bargaining process, let us also embark on the protection on the industrial strike.
Now, you say that you're talking to government now. You want the board to be replaced. You want members of management to be changed. What has been the feedback from government on this? Is there a process that you can embark on with government in this instance?
Yes, sure. Like I've reflected to the initiative that have taken place already. As we speak now, we are engaging with the acting CEO. The current CEO is on a special leave. The group executive has been suspended, Chandra Skotin. So we are engaging with the current executive, which is new, which we think that we can have, headways, we can make inroads in relations to that. Though we have emphasized that earlier on that there are concerted efforts to collapse those talks in a process.
What is your message now to the thousands and thousands of people that are affected by the strike? For instance, a lot of correspondence students at the universities, like UNISA, we saw some of the pictures running. They find it difficult to study. Municipal accounts can't be delivered. Small business especially is being affected, and that affects the poorest of the poor here in South Africa, because small business is a key driver in the workforce. Now, what's your message to those people?
The message is that as Communication Workers Union, we are committed to a permanent solution. The reason that we've been having a series of strikes is that there's been this piecemeal approach in terms of attending to the issues of strike. Our commitment, we are saying that we want to embark on serious discussion with the management and executive and the government itself so that we can bring up a permanent solution. Hence, we are saying the executive must go. Hence, we are saying that everyone must be converted into permanent position. Hence, we are saying that an increase is necessary in this financial term. So that will be a permanent, and after that, we are going to businesses, small business enterprises and the big ones to engage them and give them a surety that moving forward we'll make sure that we manage the workforce in the South African Post Office.
And in conclusion, you say there'll be no solution unless those demands are met.
In conclusion, we are saying that this is the solution. Remember, we never called for a strike. Workers are out there saying we are not going to work under these exploitation measures. So we are saying to management, we are offering you a solution to the problems. And we feel this is how we're going to resolve these problems going forward.
Aubrey Chabalala, the General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, joining us live, talking about, the never-ending post office strike now, it seems. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Now we move on to one of the top stories this morning. 20 EFF MPs, including party leader Julius Malema, will appear before Parliament's Powers and Privileges Committee today. They're facing charges of disrupting proceedings during President Jacob Zuma's question time in the National Assembly.
D-Day for the EFF. They'll have to answer for this. Last week, the Western Cape High Court struck off its role and urgent application for an interdict by the EFF to stop the disciplinary hearings.
We expect to put all the charges to them, and after conclusion of putting the charges to them, they will be requested to plead.
Mashile says while he hopes for a quick and painless resolution of the matter, they are prepared for a long, drawn-out battle just in case.
If they plead not guilty. That is the start of the marathon. That means the evidence have to be led, and then they have to, witnesses will be brought, and then even the members will be allowed to question the witnesses, and they can also bring witnesses. And after that conclusion, then the committee has to actually sit and consider the evidence and come to a conclusion.
The EFF has confirmed the appearance of its members before the committee, but wouldn't say how they will plead. Lukhana Khalata, SABC News, Parliament.
Now, British businessman Shren Devani has pleaded not guilty to murdering his wife Annie in Cape Town in November 2010. Devani's murder trial finally got underway in the Western Cape High Court yesterday. It's taken South African authorities more than 3 years to get him into the dock to answer to the 5 charges against him.
Not guilty of robbing, kidnapping and murdering his wife. This is how Shren Devani pleaded before Deputy Cape Judge President Jeanette Traverso. He also put an end to speculation about his sexuality when he admitted to being bisexual and that he had relations with a German male prostitute, Leopold Leiser. In his plea explanation read by his counsel, Devani told the court that he loved Annie and that when he learnt of her death, his world came crashing down. A video of the crime scene with Annie's lifeless body slumped on the back seat of the taxi was shown in court. It proved too much for Annie's parents, who opted not to sit through the harrowing video material.
Why did one little girl had to be shot? 4 men came out alive. Those are the questions that runs around our head. Why did these 2 men need even a gun to scare a little girl like that?
While Devani's family refuses to grant interviews, the Hindochas described the last 4 years as torture.
They mustn't allow this thing happen to other women. Even now we are here, we're supposed to be women from the various side of South Africa to come and protest here.
For us, it's quite a relief that this matter is coming to finality insofar as the administrative process of ensuring that finally there is a trial.
The state led evidence in chief of its first witness, forensic pathologist Janet Verster, focusing on Annie's fatal wounds. Verster testified that the damage to Annie's spinal cord would have rendered her paralyzed had she survived, and that she had bled to death within moments after being shot. Cross-examination has been concluded. The trial is expected to resume on Wednesday. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Western Cape High Court.
Well, let's take a quick look at your comments. What are you saying about the Devani case? Well, a terrible case, really. Sia says, South Africa portrayed as easy targets to commit crime relating to the Devani case. Well, the trial is now underway, and the message, I think, is a little bit different now. Justice will be seen to be done. Melanie says, what does his sexual preferences have to do with whether he arranged his wife's murder or not? Everything, my dear. The motive, it seems, that he was leading a double life and did not want to be married, if you understand the cultural customs at play in when very rich families, in this case of Indian descent in Britain, come together. Little Petal says, Devani case is soon to start. Can't believe it's been 4 years and still no conclusion. Well, the trial is underway. Let justice see to be done. Basil Parker says, well done to our legal system for bringing Devani to trial. Tourists will now think twice before ordering murder for breakfast. Very sober, very well put, Basil Parker. That's at the heart of the matter here in South Africa. We are not an easy country to come here and commit murder or even pay £1,000, as it were in this case, less than 20,000 rand at the time to murder your wife. That is what will be tested in the Western Cape High Court in the weeks and months to come. We'll keep you updated on this very channel as to how that goes. Let's take a look now at what the front pages of the world says to us today. Now, the Times, it seems like the world is now finally taking serious note of Ebola, especially now that a Spanish nurse has become the first person to contact Ebola outside of the African continent, casting doubt over measures taken in Spain to control the potential spread of this deadly disease. There you have the Spanish paper El País. The nurse had helped to treat 2 priests who contracted Ebola in Africa and were repatriated back to Spain. Some 30 other health workers and those who came in contact with her are now being monitored for symptoms. Both priests they died shortly after reaching Spain. And then it's all politics across the pond in Brazil, as Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff got 41.4% of the total vote in the first round of presidential elections and will go into a runoff with her nearest rival. On October 26th this month, the president will face Aécio Neves of the centrist Brazilian Social Democracy Party in a runoff. Neves won 33.55% of the vote, considerably more than pre-election polls were showing. Must have everything to do with the World Cup and the protests in the country and the fact that they're well behind schedule for hosting the Olympics in 2016 in Rio de Janeiro. More than 6 months behind schedule, some say, as all the money being spent on the World Cup. It's going to be a very, very difficult run of the election for Dilma Rousseff, one would think. Now, it's less than a week before the coroner inquest into the Synagogue Church of All Nations building collapse tragedy begins. The inquest, instituted by Lagos State Government, is expected to commence on the 13th of October and will try to establish the case and manner of the tragic September 12 building collapse. In an effort to position its view that the building collapsed as a result of what it called controlled demolition, the Synagogue Church of All Nations on Sunday released this video clip to establish its case. In the 2 minutes and 20-second video, titled Controlled Demolition versus Collapse by Structural Failure, posted on its Facebook page, TV Joshua Ministry showed clips of at least 19 buildings across the globe that purportedly collapsed as a result of controlled demolition, as well as some due to structural failure. Well, the message is quite clear to TV Joshua. In all those 19 cases, they used dynamite and other explosives to bring the building down. This one simply just collapsed, it seems. Cost more than 110 lives. You're watching Newsroom on SABC.
Anglo-American Platinum says it will be selling some of its mines in Rustenburg.
We will continue to invest in the platinum business in South Africa. We will continue to invest between 70 and 100 billion rand over the next 10 years in the country. So we're not dumping South Africa, we're not dumping our employees.
The pensioners want to recover nearly 80 billion rand, which they claim Transnet plundered from their pension fund.
I started to work on railway in 1964 until 1999. They paid me 6,875 rand 15 cents. Until that day, I didn't get nothing. Up to date, I get nothing.
That's business news, weekdays at 6 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, at the end of last month in New York, South Africa had the honour of serving as support chair at a high-level event of heads of state at the United Nations on the margins of the 69th UN General Assembly. In a comparatively short time, South Africa has become a well-functioning democracy, transforming from a racially exclusive apartheid state to a fully-fledged democratic one, a process that has, in the broadest possible sense, always involved the participation of South Africans in every corner of our country. Now, based on this history, the Open Government Partnership was launched and aims to promote increased accountability, transparency, citizen participation and the fight against corruption. South Africa joined 7 other countries at the formation of this initiative. Now, to tell us more about all of this and a little bit more detail about what happened in New York, we're joined by the Deputy Minister for Public Service and Administration here in South Africa, Ayandla Dlodlo. Very good morning, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Eben. Thanks for having me.
Just give us the sort of broad strokes about what happened in New York, and then assuming the role of co-chair of the Open Government Partnership at the UN recently.
Mm-hmm. Well, New York was one of the watershed moments for South Africa. Being part of, being a founding member of an international instrument for good governance, accountability and transparency, we've now assumed the co-chairpersonship, which is for 2014-2015, and then in 2016-2017 we take over as the lead chair of the Open Government Partnership. In Indonesia, we were nominated by a few countries. A few countries had to vote for us, and the formal appointment or the formal announcement was made in New York on the margins of the UN General Assembly.
What are the eligibility criteria that are looked at in order for countries to participate?
Okay, it's 16 points, 4 each for transparency. For citizen engagement, for fiscal transparency, for legislation that relates to access to information. Yeah. And for all of those 4 areas, we have 4 points each. And if you meet at least 75% of that, which to me I think is still a problem if we get to 90 years, but 75 at the moment it is. And we have now 65 countries that are part of this. Some of which are African countries, but fewer from Africa than it is from the rest of the
So we're very much a work in progress then, and also then leading the fight, as it were, here on the continent.
We are in a sense. I mean, the other one that I've forgotten, for instance, is the one on disclosure of financial interests by public servants and also politicians. And we lead in the continent because we have met all of the criteria. We are founding members of that. We also sit on the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, which is the continent's answer to all of the issues that the OGP speaks of. And part of our responsibility right now is to make sure that some of the African countries that are on the APRM also participate in the OGP, to give a bit of content to what it is that is done internationally, but also to showcase and sell the principles of the APRM, which in our view we think are good principles.
Part of this process is really in communicating a little bit better with the populace and maybe spreading that gospel around the continent and being a leading light on that front in the world. Are you happy with where we are in the conversation with our own people, and how would you like this to improve going forward?
I am happy so far with the work that we've done, but I do think, Eben, in all honesty, there's a lot more that we can do, especially on access to information. We have received word from some of the NGOs that some departments do not answer on questions that are raised by the public. Yeah. And it's one of the things that the President has said to me, you need to look into this to ensure that every question that is asked by the public is adequately responded to and feedback is given to people that raise issues. I think in the continent we have been requested as part of our responsibility as co-chair to ensure that we have a roadmap that speaks to outreach in the continent. We are to speak to countries, for instance, that almost meet the eligibility criteria, like Nigeria, countries like Botswana, Namibia, a few other countries in the continent just fall short of meeting the eligibility criteria. And it becomes our responsibility as a country to assist in that. Part of the reason is because there isn't legislation in place, for instance, on access to information. They would meet all of the others, but the most important is access to information. In New York, on the sidelines of the OGP, I've had discussion with the American Bar Association, who have offered that in our outreach program they'd like to partner with us so that they can assist countries in developing legislation pro bono. Now, I want to approach our own Bar Association to say, are you willing to work with the American Bar Association to offer this kind of service to the African continent pro bono, as the Americans have done?
Was this one of the top priorities that came out of the discussions of New York, or were there other more important scenarios that had to be addressed?
Well, most important is outreach, to get as many countries on board as possible and to get as many civil society organizations on board, because it's really a partnership between governments and civil society. Now, civil society can come in the form of organizations, it can come in the form of stockfields, it can come in the form of anything. We need to brand ourselves as the OGP in South Africa to ensure that we attract as many of the civil society organizations, and not only those that have access to the international world, like those that would be subject matter experts or those that are interested in a few things that do not necessarily give any credence or any light to the populace. They would be dealing with issues relating to statistics, for instance, that really the ordinary man in the village would really not be interested in. But the person in the village would be interested in, when are the roads going to be built in my area? And that's the information that we want to share with our people, working with municipalities, working with traditional authorities, and just working with the general populace, rather than looking just at civil society organizations.
And we've seen that this is really a legacy of the administration now and the previous one, is that communication process with the people, trying to get people to understand what are the moves that are fit to create this better life that we all talk about and we all see around us.
But you can only determine a better life for yourself if you have adequate information to work with. Education becomes very important. And as a result of that, on the margins, again, of the OGP in New York, we had a discussion with the with the United States education authorities. And the Undersecretary said to me, Ayanda, I've got information, I've got curriculum that I can give to South Africa free of charge. So those discussions that we have around the globe on the OGP have a positive spin-off and impact on what it is that we're trying to do in South Africa. We are looking at school connectivity. Yes. The Americans are saying, we have information that is already on the net, that is open. Please access it, but we'll help you to ensure that you access this information and package it so that not only South Africans, because I said I would love for us to look at this information, and I would like for us to have access to the curriculum that you speak of. Yeah. But I do not only want to speak for South Africa. We have a global problem in the continent of education and access to education.
In conclusion, ma'am, what does this mean for our country, but then also the OGP in practice for the citizens of the country?
Well, it means for us that we'll have people who are well informed about what goes on around them. We'll have more transparency in the way that we develop policy. We'll have developed data for people to be able to access it, so that that data can be able to help them to make decisions about their lives. You've got the NDP. Yeah. How many people can really translate what the NDP says to the kind of life and environment that they find themselves in? Yeah. It then becomes the responsibility of us within the OGP to ensure that that information trickles down in a fashion that is understandable to the ordinary citizen that might not even be literate for that matter.
And quickly, what should people be on the lookout for in the weeks and months to come?
The CDWs are going to go out and have town hall meetings to ensure that people are informed of this information. So we are going to ensure that as much information is disseminated to our people so that they can participate in ensuring that at the end of the year, they're able to measure us on what it is that we had said we were going to do around the issues of the OGP and the National Country Action Plan.
Well, fantastic. That's great news. Real movement, and communication in the end is the only thing that can lead us forward. Thank you for joining us today. That's our Deputy Minister of Public Service Administration here in South Africa, Ayanda Dlodlo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's take a quick look at what you're talking about on the news front this morning. Of course, at SABC Newsroom, that's where you are. Espresso says Border Patrol is on high alert after 71 people from Ebola hotspots entered the U.S. illegally. Well, that needs to be tested. Ebola outbreak, Ebola US. Ebola now in the US. What says Adebayo? Even with all Obama's been saying, hospitals are still not on alert. Parisha says, Ebola Spain. Spanish nurse tested positive. Scary. Why is it scary now that it gets to Spain? Got thousands of people that died here on African continent. Chief Science says, first Ebola Spain patient infected. Let's see if there's any of the same type of fear that spreads through Europe. Tomorrow says the second possible Ebola strain is now a rumour, as authorities denied to have any info regarding a second person reporting symptoms. Well, 2 priests have died in Spain and now a nurse has been affected. That is the state of the game. But that doesn't make it a crisis. It's been a crisis here on the African continent for more than a year. More than 3,500 people are now confirmed dead, with as much as 20,000 others still affected. We are in a crisis on the continent, and now that it reached Europe, doesn't make it a bigger crisis. Let's take a look at our Facebook page. What's the news there today? President Barack Obama said that the government would develop expanded screening of airline passengers for Ebola, both in the West African countries hit by the disease and now the United States. Former crime intelligence boss Richard Mluli is expected to appear in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court today after the Supreme Court of Appeal upheld a High Court ruling against the withdrawal of fraud and corruption charges he faced. And then arms deal critic Terry Crawford Brown is expected to continue giving evidence at the Sariti Commission of Inquiry today. You can find all of those stories and more live on Newsroom's Facebook page. So go and have a look-see there. Now, South African icon and Nobel Peace Laureate Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu is celebrating his 83rd birthday today. Tutu, who made a name for himself during the apartheid struggle, won a Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 for his recognition of his contributions in the struggle for freedom here in South Africa. In a beautiful interview with filmmaker Adrian Steyn for the popular 21 Icon series that was broadcast on SABC 3, Tutu spoke about his beliefs in the basic goodness of all people. Thank you, man. That was lovely.
We are made for goodness, which is fantastic. I must have been maybe 5 or 6. The thing that I really wanted to become was to be an adult.
What you said? Oops.
Wonderful entrance.
Desmond Tutu is someone the whole world respects. So the concept for the portrait was very simple. The world needs another Tutu.
You are the 1984 winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. That's a kind of announcement that you think you hear in your dream, you see, and you... And Leah and I sat there and sort of looked at each other. What is it? It's about 26
years ago.
Yes, it's about your age. They speak about a Tutu legacy, which is, I suppose, standing up for justice, saying it is possible for enemies to become friends, reconciliation and peace, speaking up for those who are downtrodden, who are the marginalized.
And I'd like you to do whatever you feel comfortable with. If you want to look horrified at the tutu, if you want to laugh at the tutu, whatever you feel comfortable with, because you are tutu. There's nothing to see there. The Archbishop got up on stage. He almost broke my tutu. He danced around the tutu and then had all of us in fits of laughter.
When they had the World Cup for the homeless, somebody took a picture of me kicking a ball. Nelson Mandela said, they must tell me I must act my age.
If you could do exactly what you're doing now, but look at me.
Why?
We got a fantastic shot of the Archbishop. It really is like a magician pulling something out of a hat. The world needs another tutu, and I think nothing says it better than that.
My mother, she was an extraordinary human being. I mean, very gentle and very caring. And I've always said to people that I resemble her physically. She was short and she had a large nose. I'm like her. I pray that I can be like her in her concern for others.
SABC News, we've got Africa covered.
SABC News delivers stories that
unify the nation
in many ways. Stories that inspire us
to see the world differently, appreciate
and celebrate our diversity. And mostly, they make this place a better country to live in despite our color, beliefs or culture.
I
am
Hendra Raghunath, Eben Jansen,
Tabile Ngwatu, Lulu Kabu.
Join us every day
as we provide updates on
local and international news
straight into your home.
We
are
SABC News.
Hello and welcome back. You're with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the morning's headlines. 20 EFF MPs, including party leader Julius Malema, will appear before Parliament's Powers and Privileges Committee today. They face charges of disrupting proceedings and displaying contempt for the National Assembly after shouting "pay back the money" at President Jacob Zuma. The MPs could be suspended from the National Assembly for up to 14 working days if found guilty. Arms deal whistleblower Terry Crawford Brown is expected to continue giving evidence at the Seriti Commission of Inquiry today. Yesterday, he made allegations of bribery, fraud and corruption against political figures in South Africa and abroad.
The emphasis in that statement was focused on the offsets. That was dismissed, and so the operatives then took some of the documents that the CDA had furnished some months earlier and fashioned them into the so-called memorandum to Patrice de Lille.
And in the first known case of Ebola transmission outside of Africa, a nurse in Spain has contracted the deadly Ebola virus after caring for a sick priest who had been flown back from West Africa for treatment. Authorities are trying to determine exactly how she contracted Ebola. Meanwhile, in the US, federal officials and airlines are discussing whether US airports should screen passengers to identify people who might have Ebola. The current Ebola outbreak has killed at least 3,439 people since it began in March.
The potential spread of the disease beyond these areas in West Africa becomes more imminent. So I'm going to be putting a lot of pressure on my fellow heads of state and government around the world to make sure that they are doing everything that they can to join us in this effort.
All those top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Thank you very much, Katrine. Now, top story, arms deal whistleblower Terry Crawford Brown is expected to continue giving evidence at the Seriti Commission of Inquiry today. Yesterday, he made allegations of bribery, fraud and corruption against political figures in South Africa and abroad.
Terry Crawford Brown, the man who pushed for the instituting of a commission of inquiry into the arms deal. He is one of the key witnesses testifying in the second phase of the Seriti inquiry.
As I say, Archbishop Ndungane in August 1999 first called for a judicial commission of inquiry, and the emphasis in that statement was focused on the offsets. That was dismissed, and so the operatives then took some of the documents that the CDA had furnished some months earlier and fashioned them into the so-called memorandum to Patrice de Lille.
His evidence is based mainly on investigations done in the UK and US and material from books authored by others.
I remember the version of the statement that I read over the weekend. You deal with the allegation that Fellowstar report is not privileged, because I think you said something like, because management of Fellowstar wanted to cleanse their reputation by releasing this document.
Earlier, the commissioners put Crawford Brown in a tight spot, demanding documentary proof to back his allegations. Lawyers representing a German company, Ferrostal, have objected to Crawford Brown's claims it paid bribes. Janji Chauke, SABC News, Pretoria.
Well, to hear a little bit more about what's happening now, let's cross live to a reporter who is right there in Janji Chauke. Very good morning, Janji. Can you hear us?
Yes, good morning, Eben.
Janji, just give us a quick expectation of what you expect to happen there today.
Yes, Eben, expectations are quite high today, as you know, that Terry Crawford Brown is one of the key witnesses. I mean, here we're talking about the person who insisted on that Judicial Commission of Inquiry. We saw the president even being taken to the Constitutional Court to ensure that the Commission of Inquiry was instituted. So his evidence is quite prominent. Actually, a short while ago, I've just seen the wife of the late former Defense Minister, Joe Modise, arriving. There's a lot of interest in what Terry Crawford Brown is going to say. You'll recall that most of the information that has been contained in the so-called Delil dossier is the sort of evidence that Terry Crawford Brown has been giving over the years, the allegations that he's been making over the years. Yesterday we saw sparks flying indeed as Terry Crawford Brown leveled allegations against the presidency. Even the former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, saying that this Commission of Inquiry, the Seriti Commission, should actually have subpoenaed Tony Blair to come and testify here, saying that when the deals were concluded between South Africa and the UK, Tony Blair was at the helm at the time. So it will be interesting to see what will be happening going forward. But his testimony has been set aside for 3 days, and we're now in day 2 as he begins testifying once again, Eben.
Now, the Commission, Judge, has been rocked by 2 prominent resignations of evidence leaders. How do you think that will affect proceedings?
Even ever since this commission got underway, we've seen one resignation after another. But we've seen the commission proceeding with its work. But there's been major delays, I have to say. For instance, the last time the commission said was almost a month ago. As you recall, that the work of this commission is expected to come to an end next month. But I don't see them finishing by November. A few weeks ago, Judge Willie Seriti, the chairperson of the commission, had indicated that they may have to apply for an extension of another 4 to 6 months. So we'll be able to hear from them what will be happening going forward. As you know, that more people are still expected to testify, especially those people that have been implicated. Here I'm talking about people like Chippy Sheikh, Fana Hlungwane, who was at the time the special advisor to the then late Defense Minister Joe Modise. Serious allegations have been made against those people of bribery, corruption and fraud even.
Has Fana Hlungwane has he been located and has he indicated a willingness to appear before the Commission?
As far as we know from the Commission is that all the people that are on the list of the witnesses, all the people have been subpoenaed, and so far we've not seen any of the people showing any objections in terms of coming here to clear their names. I mean, if you can see people like the former President Thabo Mbeki coming forward, to testify, it remains to be seen what people like Fana Hlungwane will say. But according to the Commission, they're saying that he is in line to testify. Actually, he should have testified a few weeks ago already, but because of delays in terms of leading the evidence of the other witnesses, his testimony has also been delayed. But he is indeed expected to come through and testify.
And Janji, you'll be tweeting live from the Commission again today. Just give us where people will be able to read your tweets and see the latest from inside of the building, as it were.
We are streaming the Commission live via our digital news platform, and they can also follow me at Njanji Chauke. That's NJANJICHAUKE. I'm available there on Twitter as well as on Facebook.
Njanji Chauke, thank you for joining us today on the scene. As always, he's one of the great tweeters that we have here at the SABC. Always takes great pictures, puts it up. So go at Njanji Chauke is where you can follow him today if you're really interested in what Terry Crawford Brown is saying. Of course, we're streaming it live also on our digital platforms. Let's take a quick look at what you are talking about on social media. The Archbishop, Justice Project SA, happy 83rd birthday to the Arch. Desmond Tutu there, he looks beautiful in purple as always. 0710. Another lovely picture there from Gumtree, South Africa. Happy birthday, Desmond Tutu. And there you see a picture, Desmond Tutu and Jenna Clifford. Happy birthday to the dear Archbishop Desmond Tutu. May it be filled with endless love and happiness. Hopefully she'll send him a big diamond to celebrate today's 83rd birthday. Wonderful. That's where we wrap it. Now, Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a total rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. Don't forget, we're also streaming live on YouTube during that time with the entire show available on our YouTube channel on demand all of the time. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, and you know we love it in the morning.